That first line of the Beatitudes, in a way, is an introduction and explanation to all the others. Blessed are the poor in spirit, for theirs is the kingdom of heaven. It's somewhat puzzling. Poor in spirit, or blessed, or happy, seems rather negative. But it is to be seen in contrast with people who are full of themselves. Poor in spirit has so much room for God. But people who are full of themselves have very little room for God, perhaps none at all. The larger our ego, the less we can really love. The challenge of life is to empty ourselves of our ego so that in its place God can reside. That God becomes the center of our universe and not our egos. But how do we reduce our ego in life? We reduce our ego in our life by truly loving ourselves the way God made us. Now, the way we can truly love ourselves is by the stillness of meditation. In the stillness of meditation, we drive out from our minds, our hearts, and our consciousness everything, all our fears, all our desires. We empty ourselves completely. We create a still point. And that still point, sooner or later, God will come to reside there. But there are many other things that happen when we use that stillness of the heart, the stillness of the heart that reduces the ego and all the distractions that the ego gives us. We are constantly distracted in life, pulling in all different kinds of directions, by our fears, by our insecurities, by our phobias. All these things, when we create a stillness of the heart, everything is removed. There's just a blank there. Sooner or later, God will come to dwell there. How powerful it is using the mantra. The mantra is a discipline or a dynamic that transcends ourselves, that moves us on beyond ourselves so that we can embrace the divine. And what does the divine bring with itself? It brings many of the things that the Beatitudes talk about. It brings a peace of our hearts and our minds. It also brings mercy. Oh, can we forgive ourselves for the wrong that we have done? Can we show mercy to ourselves? Can we really be compassionate to ourselves? If we can't do it for ourselves, we won't be able to do it for anybody else. And the way we develop forgiveness of ourselves, mercy and compassion, is by creating a stillness in our hearts where everything is removed. Now, another thing that this stillness creates in us, it makes us aware of a new consciousness of our goodness. Never before in the history of the world is there anyone who has our fingerprints or our DNA. But much more important than that, never before in the history of the world has there been anybody that has our soul, our spirit. Never in the future will there be anyone that have our fingerprints, our DNA, or that uniqueness of our soul. We are indeed unique. God made us that way. And when we realize that more and more, how unique we are, we humbly stand before God and we thank Him. We thank Him for making us unique. We are unique in the way that we can love ourselves and forgive ourselves and realize that we transcend all our limitations. We often don't think of the saints as sinners, but they have been. Some even say the greater the sinner, the greater the saint will be, because the greater the sinner has more to appreciate the fact that God forgives him or her. God calls us in the second reading to be a child of His. Now, what parent looks upon their child in all the things the child does wrong and hold it against the child? Parents do not do that. They delight in their children, even if their children misbehave. And so God delights in us, even if we misbehave. That's the type of loving God that we have. Now there's that parable of the net thrown into the sea that collects all sorts of things. And the person takes the net, discards what is useful, and keeps what is good. Our consciousness is like that. Our consciousness gathers all sorts of things into our minds and into our hearts. And we, through the stillness of the heart, through meditation, are to disregard all those things that are useless. And we are to keep those things that are truly good. So it comes on down in a way to what St. Paul said in regards to the ego. I live now, not I, but Christ lives in me. That is the meaning, really, of being poor in spirit. You're poor in the operation of your ego, and you become rich in the divine. In the stillness of the heart, through the mantra of meditation, we come to learn our own goodness. We come to learn how much God loves us. We come to understand that we are to be grateful to God for loving us so much. The Beatitudes in a way seem unreasonable. Blessed are the poor in spirit. Blessed are the meek. Blessed are those that mourn. However, if we look at Christ and the cross, He certainly was poor in spirit insofar as it wasn't His will, but the will of His Father. He certainly mourned, but He was comforted. And He was meek, and He would inherit the whole world. And He truly was a peacemaker. Also, He was one of single of heart. His focus was completely upon doing the Father's will. So the Beatitudes, in a way, are related to the crucifixion. That doesn't make sense, the crucifixion. Neither does being poor in spirit in a way. However, you look at the crucifixion in relationship to the resurrection. And you look at being poor in spirit in relationship to be filled with the love of God, which begins with the love of self. Some people think that the spiritual life begins with loving God, then you love your neighbor, and then finally you love yourself. It's the other way around. You begin with loving yourself. And if you truly love yourself, then you begin to love others. If you love yourself and you love others, then you love God in the deepest possible way. So let all of us remember how positive that statement is, being poor in spirit. The poor in spirit, they will have the kingdom of heaven.